All right, more blood notes. This first slide is the path of blood flow. And this is just steps in order of where the blood goes. You guys will have a quiz over this next week, and the quiz will literally just be knowing the order of where blood flows. The blood supply to the heart. So there's two coronary arteries that you have that branch off of the aorta that supply the heart with blood. And hopefully during dissections, we can find those and see those. This is a picture of blood flow with arrows. So your heart has some different actions. It contracts, which is called systole. And then the relaxing is called diastole. We also have a cardiac cycle. The atria contracts, and after that, or as that's doing that, the ventricle relaxes. So they kind of work hand in hand. When the ventricles contract, the atria relaxes. And then both relax for a brief interval. And it just keeps going through that cycle. As far as like the ventricles, when they contract, it forces what's called an AV valve to close. And then you have papillary muscles that contract, and cords hold those valves in place. And then the atria begins to fill for the next contraction. And then after the contraction, the aortic and pulmonary valves close. So they all work hand in hand to make the blood pump and flow. This is a picture of the blood filling. So this is the passive filling. Whenever the atrial contracts, that's showing this. The AV valves closing, and then the semilunar valves opening. So just kind of a visual to show you what that process looks like. Some heart sounds. The heart sounds that you typically hear are lub and dup. So the lub is the sound of the AV valves closing during ventricular contraction. And the dup sound is the pulmonary and aortic valves closing after the contraction. You might have heard of a murmur or had one or still do. This is an extra sound indicating that the valve doesn't close completely. So the blood kind of leaks back through the valve. So a lot of babies are born with these, and over time, they kind of heal themselves, which is what happened to me. And sometimes they don't, but then the doctor really monitors those. Endocarditis is inflammation of the inner heart lining. So that changes the shape of a valve too, which can cause a murmur. Let me see if I can get the sound to play on here for you.
Good grammar and spelling are important, but if you want to write essays that inspire...
Get the ads there.
When a healthy heart beats, it makes a lub-dub sound. The first heart sound, lub, also known as S1, is caused by the closing of the AV valves after the atria have pumped blood into the ventricles. The second heart sound, dub, or S2, originates from the closing of the aortic and pulmonary valves right after the ventricles have ejected the blood. The time interval between S1 and S2 is when the ventricles contract, called systole. The interval between S2 and the next S1 is when the ventricles relax and are filled with blood, called diastole. Diastole is longer than systole, hence the lub-dub, lub-dub, lub-dub. Heart sounds are auscultated at 4 different sites on the chest wall, which correspond to the location of blood flow as it passes through the aortic, pulmonic, tricuspid, and mitral valves, respectively. This is how similar defects associated with different valves are differentiated. Heart murmurs are whooshing sounds produced by turbulent flow of blood. Murmurs are diagnosed based on the time they occur in the cardiac cycle, their changes in intensity over time, and the auscultation site where they are best heard. Examples of conditions associated with common systolic murmurs include mitral valve regurgitation, when the mitral valve does not close properly and blood surges back to the left atrium during systole. The murmur starts at S1 when the AV valves close and maintains the same intensity for the entire duration of systole. This hollow systolic murmur is best heard at the mitral region, the apex.
Okay, I wanted you to hear the sounds and kind of see a visual of what that looked like, because in text it's kind of hard to understand. As far as like the nodes, so the SA node is the key portion in the right atrium, and these are some of the things that it does. It stimulates the heart to contract. It helps with like pacing, and it triggers the AV node. So the AV node contracts the ventricles. You'll have to know that about it. And then something called Purkinje fibers, they connect cells in the ventricles, but you don't have to know that. That's just some extra information. And an ECG is a recording of electrical charges in your heart during a normal cardiac cycle. It's like a series of waves that they represent, like on a picture. They call them QRS waves. And then they show the systole on there. With this, physicians can look at the graphs and stuff and diagnose certain heart conditions. So if you have arrhythmia or an altered heart rhythm, that means like no blood is being pumped. They can see that on this test. Ventricular fibrillation is a rapid, uncontrolled heart rhythm. Tachycardia, that's when it abnormally beats too fast. A flutter, when the heart chamber contracts too quickly. And then something called a pacemaker can be implanted to shock the heart, to kind of almost reset it. And that should be the end of this section.